you have any more real thoughts on Maxi here? I feel like we could probably talk for longer. But
yeah, I mean, I don't want
this-
to. I feel like I've sufficiently buried him enough in the first 15 minutes of the show, and
we've also got a lot of people. There's a lot of victims on this podcast.
well, so we do have a super chat from Bernard McCoy who says the problem with Maxi is pace. Nick Nurse needs to stop telling him to play fast because he's getting tired. Let him bring the ball up with no Iverson screens. It's too much. Fatigue in all caps. I would say this. You want to lean into Maxi's pace, certainly, right? And I do understand the inclination to play with pace because if you watch them play half-court offense, they were not exactly firing on all cylinders there. So if you can get stops and, get out and score before the defense is set, that will help offset some of the half-court issues. And to the point of the Iverson cuts, the one thing I would say to that is, look, they got to get him shaken free in any way possible. Like, yes, ideally, you get him the ball a little easier and don't have to run him through a maze of screens. But unfortunately, he's so high up that scouting report and such a high priority with Joel and Paul in street clothes. I'm not sure how you avoid stuff like that.
No, the Iverson cut is almost specifically designed to try to get a lethal perimeter scorer open who's otherwise being overloaded by a defense. I think you're going to have to use that, especially right now with Embiid and Maxi out. It's just they don't really have another threat, so they can still overload Maxi even if he's running off of 6 screens. It really is like this roster without Paul George feels so much like last year. And so many of the players are so limited in what they can do either as a shooter or putting the ball on the deck that it's just real easy. And you combine that with the fact that Maxi is clearly not playing anywhere near the top of his game. And it's freaking ugly.
Bree, is there any way we can bring up the picture that I sent you in our Slack chat? Yeah. That is how I feel about the Sixers right now, Derek. Yeah. And I know that it was a running joke all throughout the offseason. Well, I shouldn't say joke. It was a running bit, right? Because it was about guys shorter than me. And granted, tonight was a pretty exceptional situation where Kyle Lowry, Jared McCain, and Reggie Jackson are probably never going to play together at the same time ever again, I would hope, because foul trouble is not going to coincide with absences to their stars and yada, yada, yada. But it really does. Like the fact that you have basically no creation on this team unless you play a bunch of 6 foot tall guys is really dispiriting. And I know that you take away your two or three main offensive hubs. Of course, you're not going to have a lot of shot creation, but it really does drive home, Derek, the stuff that we've said throughout the offseason and, in predicting what we think they'll do at the deadline, that, man, they're going to probably have to get a shot creator and like a real shot creator if they're looking for a final piece going into the playoffs.
No, most of the people whose decision-making you trust are 105 years old. And the people with any kind of athleticism, you don't really trust their decision-making. It's a very imperfect combination for sure. For sure. And they're also too small. No, it's...
I just had to throw that in there. I just was like burning a hole in my brain.
Going to the fives, because I feel like the 5 men were a big... outside of Maxi, were a pretty big story in this one. Drummond came a little short on Bree's pregame over-under, but put up a pretty good stat line, I would say. 11 points, 9 rebounds, 4 steals, 2 blocks. I thought that stat line oversold his contributions a little bit, especially the defensive ones. He made a nice block after he had a terrible outlet pass. He had a couple good steals, especially there in the fourth quarter to try to get them back in. But in the first half, I thought he was getting cooked real badly on the pick and roll. He just was not able to get back to the roll man. And the points in the paint came down to 2 things. First of all, the offensive rebounding, but also then being unable to stop that pick and roll. And I thought you did see some limitations of Andre Drummond as a defender and Andre Drummond as a big minute solution. I think he's going to look much better in a 12 to 14 minute per game backup role, but I thought he was exposed a little bit defensively.
Derek, he had 3 defensive rebounds tonight.
Yeah.
3 defensive rebounds for a guy. And look, he was in foul trouble, finished with 5 fouls, and his minutes got yanked around all game. I understand it's hard to establish a rhythm, but you and I talked throughout the preseason and even during the opener, right, about there are times when you look at his rebounds and you're like, it's a little bit of like he's just getting all the cheapies, and some of the contested ones are not coming down with him. Like maybe he'll tip it up and he'll battle for it, but he's not. I really felt that tonight, right? I didn't think he made anywhere near as much of a difference as he needed to make. And you're right, like 11 points on 11 shots as a guy who is all his shots are by the rim. Not good, to put it lightly. Like that's just, you're not going to get it done. They went to hack a drumming. Somebody called it bang a drum. I think it was, I want to say Eric Kareen at The Athletic was the one who floated that. I really appreciated that. But yeah, I think, and it's weird, right? Because at least against Milwaukee, you would say that's a pretty uniquely challenging setup where Brook Lopez is going to drag him out. And so he's got to go back and forth between the rim and the three-point line. Well, Jakob Poeltl is not taking jumpers at all, right? Like your defensive responsibilities are playing drop, staying in front of your guy and sealing him off for rebounds. And I thought he did a really poor job of navigating that pick and roll coverage tonight. So really disappointing night from him. I would then go to like, there was a point in this game where I would have declared Yabusele the player of the game, and we almost ended up there anyway. But I do think you look at how Toronto punished them in the paint and the lack of rebounding from Yabusele, and it's just like the guy's not a 5, right? Like we said coming into the game, this was a great test for him between Poeltl and Boucher, and why am I blanking on the guy that they had out? Mogbo, who's out there tonight, who they used as a 5. This was an opportunity for Yabusele to, stake a claim as, I'm a pretty solid third big, and I'll be here at that 5 spot for a lot of the year. This is really dispiriting. And I think some of it was they need to tune down the aggression a little bit on defense, I think, when they don't have PG and they don't have Joel, certainly.
You can't ask Yabu to be a last line of defense.
Yeah, but I mean, when he was in position to make a contest at the rim, they couldn't rebound. When he was in rebounding position, they couldn't contest anything at the rim. And with the way they were overplaying guys and getting back cut most of the night, it was just a layup line for Toronto for most of this game. And no, I think the bigger ticket concern here is the offense. Like the offense was just putrid. Shot 38% from the field. But to let this Toronto team have a, relatively effective offensive night and to have to play out of half-court sets for a good chunk of that game, I think that's why the offense is not able to succeed, as you gave them – they had, 18 offensive rebounds in this game, Toronto?
They rebounded half of their missed shots. Yeah, they rebounded half of them.
Just insane to have that many offensive rebounds in a single game. And so some of that comes down to you don't have a true big man there. Like I still remain pretty optimistic about Yabu as a rotation guy. And I think, frankly, based on their team size and what we're seeing at the other positions, he's going to probably have to play a good amount of minutes at the 4. Like I don't think he's someone that when Joel comes back is going to fade from the rotation really at all. But I think they're going to be really challenged to get stops on these nights that they don't have Joel available, because I don't trust Drummond as like a normal pick and roll defender. And then once they have to go small, it's just been a layup line so far.
Yeah. No, and it really was like this game was frustrating for a lot of reasons. First, the offense was putrid. It's not great. The rebounding was a massive problem. But this was a Toronto team that if you confine them to a half-court game, you should have won that game.
Yeah.
And actually, according to Clean and Glass, the Sixers averaged more points per play in the half-court than Toronto did. There were 2 problems. First of all, the Sixers, when they missed, almost always turned into a fast break the other way, especially in the first half, when, again, the Sixers seemed like they were really trying to challenge them at the rim. It wasn't working. That turned into a fast break opportunity for Toronto a lot. But when Toronto did miss in the half court, and again, I think the Sixers' first shot defense was mostly outside of overplaying, which I agree happened a lot. The you understand a little bit why they were trying to do that because they didn't have confidence in their half-court offense. They're trying to get on break, but I think it did backfire against them. But when Toronto missed, they rebounded again half of their missed shots. So the even if you played decent first half or first shot defense, it was all thrown away by transition opportunities and by the fact that you couldn't grab a rebound. I do think Yabu was a very key factor in that. And I agree with you. Unless like the other four are so fundamentally sound on the perimeter and so great at keeping their man in front of them, I think what we're seeing here in terms of him being a center, I don't know if it's going to work. In fact, I have a pretty strong opinion that don't think it's going to work. I'm still open to seeing it a little bit more, in part because this regular season is about trying stuff. But the first look has not been great. And I think he's done a lot of good stuff.
As you get tail whipped by your cat over there, by the way.
My cat is wide awake. I think he's done some good stuff. Like the hustle, I like.
Yes.
I thought his screen setting, when Maxi actually made some shots early in the first quarter, both of those threes, I think, came off of Yabu screens. He does a real good job. Because Tyrese sort of has a tendency to go a little bit early before the big man gets set. We saw Drummond get hit with a moving screen early on. Yabu does a real good job of anticipating that. So a lot of centers, if the guard starts moving early, they have two options. They either don't make contact or they draw a foul. Like I said, it seems like Yabu does a real good job of anticipating that. That has just been leveling guys over the first two games. The hustle is there. I like that. The shooting has been, I think better than I expected. I'd still love to see more above the break, but I think it's been better than I expected. But he cannot protect the rim, and the rebounding has been a problem. And I'm interested to see what happens when he's able to play four a little bit more when Joel comes back. But yeah, the stuff at the five has not been great or good.
I think we're in complete agreement. Like I'm very interested to see him as a four, but I just think he is not. It's not his fault that he's not a five, right? He's being put in a position where he has a pretty low likelihood of success based on his own skills, how they're playing defense around him, and just the personnel that he's playing with. So I don't hold that against him. And frankly, like I think, based on what I've seen from the fans, people on social, whatever, like I think people have been reasonable about what he is and sort of, why he's not succeeding at a higher level in that spot. Like nobody's like, oh, terrible signing, like send this guy back to Europe or whatever. Everyone's pretty clear-eyed about what's happening.
We all silly like the mayor.